Good morning, good afternoon. Mark Miller here in New York City with a gang of people on the other end. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, you know what? We're going to do introductions as we go along here, but the basic premise of today is we've got the RunDeck guys on here from Simplify Ops, and we're going to be talking to them about what they're seeing in the real world when it comes to RunDeck and Nexus inside of production environments. We also have Manfred Mosier for our typical 2-minute challenge and anything else that Manfred and I would like to talk about. And we've got Rich Seddon on the other end. Rich, we usually start with you, right? And see what you're working on. You want to give us kind of a fill-in on what's going on with Nexus support?
Just real quick, yeah. So we're about to do a point release against 2.8, 2.8.1. In fact, I would probably be working on releasing that right now if I wasn't here talking to you guys. So it should be going out soon. It's just a collection of bug fixes, but definitely a recommended release if you're already on 2.8 or if you're considering going to 2.8. You'll want to wait for the 2.8.1 release to go out, or you want to upgrade to it when it comes out. And we'll be sending an announcement out to the various mailing lists and such as soon as that gets done.
Is that quickly? Is that within the next couple of days, or when is it?
Yeah, it should be. All going well, it'll be later today. We'll see how it goes.
All right, cool.
And as usual, we already have it been running on various servers like OSSIH and others, so it's battle tested.
If you wanna see the secret of when we're about to release, all you got to do is monitor those servers. When you see the releases pop up, you know it's coming.
That'd be great. Manfred, we're also, speaking of 2.8, we're working on updating the book and working on some surprises there, right?
Yeah, we overhauling the book a little bit, going through it, and with the fine comb sort of thing, and making sure everything is up to date. As of now, it is totally up to date to 2.8.1. We're also trying to go with the future sort of, or presence, and start getting ebooks out, and also support people that want to still have a good old, heavy book weight. So we'll try to get a sort of print-on-demand setup, as well as an ebook distribution going in the next couple of, well, let's say weeks. It might be a month or two off. But yeah, we are hard working on that.
Yeah, it's looking good. I've had to look at it too, as you and Bonnie are doing the copy edit. It's looking good. It's looking good. The other thing that you and I normally do on these, and Damon, this is where you and your crew can jump in and kind of evaluate. We actually challenge Manfred to a 2-minute challenge to see if there's something that he can do in Nexus within 2 minutes. We had something come in with email this morning, right, Manfred? Something about a trash can. What was the challenge on that?
Yeah, it's just somebody ran out of disk space, or felt like he's running out of disk space, with a few hundred gigabytes accumulating on the hard disk of the server, which is quite a lot of data, even in the days of terabyte hard disks, especially if it's just laying around and not being used for anything. And it's around the focus that just as you delete files on any desktop operating system, it's actually not getting deleted in Nexus. It gets put into the trash. And so if you're thinking of preserving disk space by just deleting stuff in Nexus, well, it's not actually going to happen. It's just going to put in the trash. And there's 2 easy ways to do the deletion of those artifacts. So I can show those later if you want.
Yeah, Rich, you answered that question, didn't you? I thought I saw that come through the mail for you.
Yeah, that's correct. I did answer it, and Manfred should be able to show that in 2 minutes. I can give it away a little bit, and the solution is the solution that's probably the one you want to use ongoing is going to be that there's a scheduled task that can be set up in Nexus, and that's not the only scheduled task you're going to set up in Nexus if you've got it running in production. I would encourage people who have not already done so, go to support.sonatype.com, type in scheduled tasks, and there is an article there that describes all of the scheduled tasks and when you should run them. And the same information is also available in the Nexus book if you prefer to go that route. But if you haven't set up your scheduled tasks in Nexus, you really should be taking a look and doing that.
Oh, great.
Like a regular service for your car, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to keep it running well,
Manfred, can you run through that real quick? Can you show us that?
Let me just fire up my screen share.
Damon, Alex, if you see something kind of fishy here, call him out.
All right, I got my Nexus 2.8.1 running here, and you guys should be seeing it. Is that all good for everyone?
That's great.
Okay, so Typically, there's two ways to do this. You have the trash accumulating everywhere in the individual repositories and so on. And the easier way to just get rid of it quickly is to go to the repositories tab within Nexus that you can access by going to the Views repository menus on the left here. And you see right there on the top is a trash button. You press that, empty trash, and then you're done. That deletes the trash overall as well as in the individual repositories. However, you don't really want to like regularly log in and doing that. So as Rich mentioned, for any regular maintenance like that you want to do in Nexus, you should do as a scheduled task. That scheduled task is available in administration on the left here in scheduled task menu. And if I bring this up here, you see that I got a whole whackload of them already configured. And I can just create a new one very easily by going add, and then here I can say take out the trash.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. As a task type here, you see, like Rich mentioned, there's a whole lot of them available, and depending on your usage of Nexus, various will be useful. It's definitely worth looking into that and also getting an idea of how you use Nexus. The one we talked today about is empty trash. Once you've selected a task type, you get these task settings underneath that are specific to that task type and applicable to that only. And you can see here I can select that I can clean out all repositories or maybe only my snapshot repository or whatever I like. Just as a big sweep, I can just go all repositories, and then I just say, well, what are we going to toss out? Well, everything that's older than a week, for example, 7 days here. I can then set up an alert email for any scheduled task that will get an email if something goes wrong, like if the deletion doesn't work or whatever. Alert would be sent. And then all scheduled tasks also have a recurrence to set up. This recurrence is things like manual, where you just sort of have a pre-configured task that you can click, but more interestingly are the automatic ones. Once means sometime in the future, so you want to configure it now, but you want to run it at 10 o'clock at night, you can do that. Or then the more scheduled ones are everything from hourly, daily, weekly, also including like multiple days a week, so you could do every Monday and Thursday or whatever. And you can see here the start date and the time. And then if you're really going into the whole like super advanced stuff and you have like really weird schedules that you want to achieve, you can use the advanced one as well, which allows you a cron expression. And you see here there's all sorts of on the third Friday of every month and weird things like that. And there's a lot of help and explanation right here. So you can set that up. Once you've done that, let's say for example on this one we'll set it up to go daily at whatever, 10 o'clock for now, sure, safe. That task is created. I can refresh the list here. I'll see that take out the trash task here. And when I have it selected in the list here, I can just run it as well. So I can say run. It's running. And that was very quick, so it's already finished. And I can see the last run here is the date of today on the right. If a task takes longer, and some tasks do take longer, I can go into the system feeds, and in the system feeds for the system change one of those system changes here allows me to see I think it's just the system changes here.
Yeah, that's
actually.
Right.
That shows you when it's finished, right? So
yeah.
You can see here that it's finished. That's especially useful for tasks that run longer. And there is some that take a bit longer in terms of things like optimizing indexes and recreating metadata and those sorts of things. So definitely something worth checking out.
One thing I would just point out about that, the big key to that one is the purge items older than days. So you want to give yourself some grace period there, right? Maybe, I don't know, a week or 30 days, so that if you do delete something by mistake, you'll be able to recover it. And yet at the same time, it'll be removing things on a regular basis so that your disk won't get too full. So that's the main thing to think about with that task.
Damon, you've seen Nexus a bit. Is this something new for you? I'm just wondering if this is something typical people would know about.
Sorry, I was on mute there.
Okay.
No, I think this is good stuff. This is interesting stuff. I think in general, people are underinformed when it comes to getting the most out of their tools. So I think the more workflow things we can show people, I think the better off they'll be.
Speaking of workflow, welcome. Thanks for coming.
No problem. Actually, so Alex is trying to fix his audio. Alex, can you hear people now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah,
Okay.
you came back in. Great.
All right, there we go. Sorry, we're being
For some reason.
quiet. We had some technical.
That's okay. So
Technical.
first of all, Damon, could you introduce yourself, introduce your team, and let's talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. I'm Damon Edwards with Simplify Ops. Two of my other co-founders are on the call as well, Alex Honor and Greg Schuler. And the point of Simplify Ops is to further the development on the RunDeck project and support the RunDeck community. And we do that through kind of classic open source services, training, sponsor development, those sorts of things.
So give us like the 10,000-foot overview. You ran off with RunDeck. What is RunDeck?
Yeah, sure. Alex, you want to bring up the slides with a little deck to kind of.
There you go. Hey, Alex.
Yeah. Okay.
So while Alex is doing that, I mean, RunDeck, I think as a tool, it's one of those things that kind of doesn't have a clear category for it yet. But if you want to try it tie it back to the classic, IT tool categories. Some folks call it IT process automation. Some folks call it, next generation runbook automation. But really, what RunDeck is, it's about formalizing your operations procedures, right? So it gives you a place to formalize the things that operations needs to do, repeatedly. But it's not just for the operations team. I think one of the key parts of RunDeck is safely enabling self-service for the rest of the organization, right? We'll talk more about that in a minute. And I think what's also key about RunDeck is it's built kind of from the ground up for this new kind of cloudy and DevOps world that we're living in, right? So it's very could be source driven or GUI driven. It's made to integrate well with the other tools around you in kind of very tool chain style. It's made to foster collaboration. It's made to be as as simple to use as possible. In fact, that's one of the things that we really kind of hold dear, is looking for all the ways we can simplify RunDeck for its users, to really kind of encourage that sort of high scale very dynamic both organization and infrastructure that people like to have these days. And it's all open source. It's Apache version 2 license. It's all up on GitHub. We actively encourage contributions, and I think a lot of that comes in the way of plugins. It's very, very pluggable architecture. So that's the RunDeck from the highest level. Alex, you want to go to the next slide? So, kind of why... Oh, go ahead, Manfred.
What is it written in, if I want to contribute?
Oh, it's RunDeck itself. The core is written in Java, but you can contribute. I mean, you can write plugins in shell scripts, right? So most folks, when they're contributing, by way of plugins. Alex, or Greg, any other kind of comments about that?
Yeah, that's correct. Excuse me. The plugin system lets you write plugins in Java if you need to, or you can use shell scripts to extract them in a for most of the plugin types.
We're getting a lot of echo. I'm sorry. We're getting a lot of echo, and I can't hear what's going on there. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was just saying that the shell scripts let you write a plugin in a simple way and then use a zip file to distribute that plugin. So it's really easy for people who aren't Java programmers to create plugins.
Yeah. So I think for all communities, they need a big why, right? What's the why behind RunDeck? I think first and foremost, to kind of consider what the pressures that kind of a modern ops team is under, right? So, if they have the things that they're focused on, they're trying to enable these kind of new high-scale, highly ephemeral infrastructures. They've got their kind of modern tooling and the things that they need to focus on. But there's really kind of two pressures that are really impacting ops teams today and making their lives difficult. Next slide, Alex. So first is these DevOps concerns, right? So from the business, from QA, from developers, people want to go faster. They want more access. They want faster throughput to production. They want they need people to get out of their way, right? And they often are complaining that ops is either blocking them or just becomes the bottleneck because there's so much work being thrown at them. And the next slide. The other issue is that all the classic ops concerns are even stronger today, right? So also from the business, but from infosec, from compliance, they want resiliency, they want security, they want auditability, right? Nobody wants to lose their job or go to jail, right? They see what happened to Target, they see what happened to Neiman Marcus, they see anonymous attacks, they see all of these privacy laws and issues that are going around. So ops is really being squeezed. They're outnumbered, they're outgunned, or they're being squeezed between these two competing concerns, when really all they're trying to do is get their work done. They're trying to automate their infrastructure. They're trying to provide scalability. They're trying to focus on providing high quality operations, and these demands are are pinching them in both in both ways. So next slide. So RunDeck. What's RunDeck all about, right? So RunDeck is a way for them to take those standard procedures, the things that they do, and provide those self-service interfaces for those other roles and other teams in the organization that need some operation tasks to get done, right? So rather than having to sit behind a ticket system and answer these ticket requests or constantly being bombarded with emails asked to do things, they're able to use RunDeck as a way to say, I've got my formalized procedures, things that I know how to do, and I want to securely and safely be able to hand those out to various folks in the organization, usually along two lines. One is self-service, like folks need. They want to be able to provision an environment. They want to be able to check status of something into production. They want to be able to reset or reconfigure or redeploy something, being able to hand out that type of control, and also visibility, just allowing people in the organization to have a better visibility into operations activity and seeing where things are at and where things are happening. And so by using RunDeck, the ops team can set those things up, can manage those things via RunDeck, and then sit back and focus on the things that they need to focus on, and let the other people have the self-service and visibility that they need. So that's the big why, right? And how RunDeck actually does that, and what the activity actually looks like under the covers. The first thing to know about RunDeck is it's designed to really integrate well with the rest of your tools and the rest of your infrastructure, right? So things that are very pluggable and that you want to feed into RunDeck, one is your on the right-hand side here, your node data, right? So RunDeck knows about your nodes, it knows about your environment, it knows the attributes and where to find things. RunDeck also integrates to your various directory servers and other authentication and access control systems. So RunDeck can provide that fine-grained access control that you are sure that only the right people have the right access to the right things. RunDeck also can really help aggregate data from any type of data source in the form of option data that can be fed into these various jobs that people are executing. This is where it's very apropos to today's conversation when Alex dives into deeper how this all works. Much of what the integration with Nexus is at that option data level. And then also external logging, right? So you've got all this activity going on. RunDeck provides that kind of central point to where you can actually log and audit all of that operations activity that's happening, whether it be the operations team that's doing it themselves or the things they've parceled out to others to do via self-service, right? And that's really important for not only management concerns, like being able to know, hey, what happened when we've seen an outage, what happened at this point in time, who changed what, where they changed it, what was the state of the environment at that point, but also for all those compliance and security concerns that get piled on, right? We need to know those same type of questions, but much more, to meet the regulatory and security demands. So that's kind of RunDeck in a nutshell there. And then on the left, what people do with it, you're either executing predefined jobs. Someone set up a job for you to go do something. More of the power user mode, which much more the ops team mode, is the ad hoc commands. Oops, looks like we lost our slide there. So I can keep talking while Alex rejoins. But there's basically those three types of things, right? Either I'm executing my jobs, or I'm working in an ad hoc mode, like I'm on the operations team. I want to jump on the console and say, all the nodes of this type run this command and bring back the output for me. And also the other one is very, RunDeck can be very API driven. So a lot of folks have the other tooling in their organization driving RunDeck jobs and calling RunDeck jobs on demand.
Right.
So let's see. I think Alex is
when we're looking at this, Damon, Manfred, Rich, any comments, any questions on this?
I was just going to ask, when you're saying things running on the node, so you basically have a server that is like sort of the orchestrator, and then all the nodes have some sort of little client installed that then goes like and listens to the master or something, or?
Yeah, no, actually, so there is no, out of the box, there is no client on the various nodes. So, RunDeck's default way of talking to things is SSH. That's just kind of the way that comes out of the box. But that's also very pluggable. So some folks might use mCollective, or they might use Knife. They might use on the Windows side, they use WinRM. They can also use there's the Sigwin and SSH setup. So there's a variety of ways to talk to nodes. Some folks use Salt. That's another popular integration. So the idea being there, the sort of the default mode of RunDeck wants to care about the process, and it wants to care about the human to tool, human to process interaction. And RunDeck wants to know where to send commands to and where to dispatch commands to. But how those commands get there, if you don't want to use SSH, then that's a pluggable point, a well-defined plugin point, and you can define various executors.
So even totally pluggable.
Yeah, and you can also define your own logic in there too, right? So some folks have higher, security concerns or network topology concerns, so they want to be able to create their own executors that will know to go through a bastion host or some type of more complex concern. We see that a lot in the financial services world where they've got complex access and connectivity issues.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's what RunDeck does. So who's using RunDeck? It was an interesting thing. So we do find there's a heavy bias towards the folks that are in kind of a web operations mode. And those folks that are kind of leaning more towards the, I'd say more the modern, continuous delivery, agile DevOps styles of thinking and working. But what's interesting about it is that we find that the most of the people that reach out to us about RunDeck or make it known they're using RunDeck, a lot of them are large enterprises, and it's kind of a curious thing that they not only have massive scale of infrastructure and services to manage, but it's also they have organizational complexity to grapple with. This is really kind of a big eye opener for us when we when people tell us their RunDeck stories over the past year or so. It's been that they see there's a lot of tools out there to help them automate things, but they really can help. They like about RunDeck is it helps them turn that automation into the standard operating procedures that they can then use to start to tame their organizational complexity. Right? They can hand off to folks and help things move through smoother and quicker.
Damon, Mark here. That
Yeah.
wasn't the original purpose of the tool, right?
No. Well, I mean, it was always people always kind of used RunDeck for that, but RunDeck I think originally was much more looked at just purely for the orchestration side, something that can help orchestrate procedures, especially on the deployment side. So a lot of folks had their Chef or their Puppet or CF Engine or Ansible, whatever it might be, at the kind of to put all the bits on the box and put things in the right place, but then they wanted something kind of they could define those higher level processes and make them visible. It was often used as sort of that kind of automation glue, right? The way to glue your various tools together, and it's really been as the communities use it, that's really evolved to where this whole self-service use case has really jumped to the forefront, and it's the interaction between the people and those tooling and procedures that is the complexity that they want to tame. So usually they're worried about just making stuff work internally themselves, but then step two is always, okay, now I want to actually let other people push these buttons so they can safely do the work, and we can focus on the stuff we got to do, to move the ball forward, right?
Good.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go through a couple of just use cases real quick, and then Alex will dig into the meat of what you guys care about, which is the Nexus and RunDeck integration. So, deployment automation, right? This is always the top of people's concern. Kind of two modes. Either is, sort of a zero-click mode, right, or continuous delivery type mode, where you've got some CI server building your packages going into some repository, probably Nexus, and then that process is kicking off RunDeck to actually go and manage the deployment process, but also folks want to use it as well. They want to be able to run that same process manually, right? So have RunDeck be able to just go to RunDeck and be able to tell it to go and deploy something or redeploy something, reconfigure something. Deployment automation always top of the line concern. The next one is which always comes with this is, again, one of these things that really, we started to understand more as we worked with larger enterprises is the problem of providing visibility into that deployment activity, right? So it's like I've got a group, something's happening, I want to deploy something, maybe I've got some developers that want to watch along, but they don't have access to these environments, or I've got some product managers, they want to be able to understand what's going on with this activity, but they don't really understand the all the log output flying around. Or maybe I have folks that are more casual observers. They just want to know if something succeeded or something failed, right? So how do I, in doing this deployment work or having the deployment work automated being done, how do I disseminate that information to folks, right? So a lot of folks, they use that's kind of step 2 of their RunDeck work, is to be able to let them provide that type of visibility. And then, what often usually quickly follows from that is self-service dev and QA environments, right? It's like, okay, we've got, we want to get these, we always have this demand from the development side of the house, from the QA folks to say, give me the button, let me deploy my own and manage my own environments. I need to do it in the same way that I'm doing it in production, because that's the best way to know that I'm actually testing the right thing. But I need to be in control, right? Because I can't wait to fill out a ticket and then 2 days later find out that my QA environment was created and something was incorrect or whatever it might be. So often, what we see a very strong use case for RunDeck is, or popular use case for RunDeck, I should say, is enabling dev and QA folks to manage their own environments and manage them in such a way that they would be managed also on the production side of the house as well. Kind of encourage that DevOps style of working. And then the other interesting one that we see, last one, and this is one that again has kind of big organizational effects, is empowering the NOC, right, or empowering the support teams to get more done, right? So allowing the application and operations engineers to define standard operating procedures for a standard runbook of things to do in case of issues. Often it's restart the server, restart the application, redeploy the configurations, clear the caches or clear the logs. Usually some standard vocabulary like that, and then enable folks to actually do their own support. And we recently, there's a case study that we're working on with a large enterprise in the community, and they're talking about just after a few months of empowering this with RunDeck, they're seeing like their mean time to repair has gone from like 40 minutes down to like 14 minutes or something like that, and for an average outage, and they're thinking they're going to cut out half of their support cost this coming year, half of the the NOC cost. Yeah, just because it's just they're tired of running around. You got to escalate to somebody else, and it was just destructive for the organization and inefficient. And by using RunDeck as the focus, it wasn't all RunDeck, right? I mean, RunDeck is the focusing point for them. But by putting their energy into funneling this through RunDeck and that standard vocabulary, standard operating procedures, they're going to enable this style of working. They call it control at the edges, and it's a cool story. So it's cool on the the RunDeck side and just a sort of general web operation side. But I think it's also kind of a cool DevOps story as well. So,
Mary, Damon, as you're looking at this, let me go to Manfred and Rich for a second.
Sure.
Manfred, any comments so far on what you're seeing?
I like that it's going so far. I've not looked at RunDeck close, but I like that it's now going beyond just pure let's get this operational happening, but also pull in people like external people that are concerned, but just give them a clean notification and, oh yeah, Mr. VP, by the way, we got a new version deployed successfully in the last overnight or whatever, and it's all hunky-dory and you don't have to worry, that sort of stuff. I think that's a very bright focus of thinking, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's been the big driving force in the last year. You've seen a lot of the RunDeck improvements go around those things because we've realized there's sort of two competing demands here, right? One is the dev and QA and all those folks saying, just let me do my thing and get out of my way, right? So give me the button I need to push, give me what I need to do. I don't want too much, this idea of I don't want root access. I guess that's not that, that doesn't make sense. It's just let me do the things I need to do, empower me to do those, and let me do it in a kind of constrained, safe way. And then on the ops side of the house, it has the if everyone stopped bothering me, I can get done what I need to get done, right? So there is they're always outnumbered, they're always outgunned by the rest of the organization, and they're kind of, as I said before, they're under assault from those two directions. So this lets both sides be happy, right? This lets the ops folks get things under control, standardize how they do things, and quick and easy, and then push that control out to other folks to relieve the pressure on that's felt, the resource contention that's felt on them. So, and then the third piece being there, you said that kind of management layer, give them visibility and assurance and comfort of this overall process is working well. So we feel like if we can satisfy those three demands, or we can make those 3 points of view their lives better, then we think we're doing something cool.
Before Damon gets into the next section, Rich and Manfred, I'm wondering if you can guess how Nexus and RunDeck can be perceived working well together before Damon even shows us.
I'm not sure how much I want to guess, but I'm looking at this, and it seems to me there ought to be a natural tie-in with Nexus staging and RunDeck here. That you're moving artifacts through a workflow, and that getting them deployed through RunDeck seems like it might be the natural end of that workflow. But I'm curious to see what you've actually done here in terms of Nexus integration.
Sure. Yeah. So
I'm not allowed to guess because I know the run.
So without further ado, let's talk about Nexus and RunDeck.
Cool. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah. So Alex, why don't you? This is Alex will take you deep into the rabbit hole here.
Yeah. Right. You guys hear me all right?
Yeah, Alex, could you do a full screen on that slide so we can get full visibility of the graphics?
Sure. You see that okay?
Yeah, much better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so this is really the most common use case that we see with RunDeck with respect to continuous delivery or self-serve deployment or even production releases. So, the normal development activity here on the left, you have developers committing code that Jenkins is picking up, firing off a build. Eventually that build gets published into a Nexus repo. And so kind of flipping onto the right-hand side of this drawing, there's two interactions that RunDeck plays a part in. First of all, in a zero-click continuous delivery process, the Jenkins there's a Jenkins RunDeck plugin that will trigger a deploy job. So a lot of times when people are setting up a CD process, they may use Jenkins to run a shell script that does some deployment. But a lot of applications are multi-tier and they're distributed over nodes, and that gets kind of harder and harder to do just within Jenkins. And because RunDeck knows about the infrastructure, especially if it's a dynamic infrastructure, then you can leverage RunDeck's ability to dispatch actions around. And so that's really helping the CD process from a Jenkins standpoint. And to formalize how the artifacts flow through the process, this is where Nexus comes into play. You have snapshots that maybe are being deployed through this RunDeck plugin on commit. But at some point, release manager, build engineer, or who decides that this needs to move down the line, is going to do that staging promotion process inside Nexus. So they might move it into the releases repo, or they might have other repos that represent candidates and layers of testing. And at this point, might be a project manager, release manager, a QA engineer doing regression testing. This is where we get into the self-serve side of the story. And the person needs to choose what version of artifact to deploy to what systems. And this is where the plugin on the Nexus side helps out. It provides a list of artifacts and versions as job choices to that user. And then you'll see just in a bit that those choices then can get deployed out via RunDeck's own ability to copy files remotely, or it may send that version or artifact choice to another tool, could be Puppet or something like that, to do the pull and installation. So, but this is a great picture here because it shows the most common and I think great example of a tool chain.
Something that popped up when you mentioned that, wanted to ask about, do you see lots of people having the kind of different repositories for different stages, like you were saying, that there is like a production and a QA repository and that sort of things, and things flow around there?
The main difference we see is really between non-production and production. So in other words, in the world of QA and testing and development, it may be a single Nexus instance with a number of repos. Of course, it also depends on how big the team is. If this team is really developing a number of components, they might choose to have their own private and public-facing repos that they use to kind of create a switching yard to move the artifacts into integration layers of the process. The main difference we do see is especially when the operations team's like in a different department, sort of a traditional IT operations, then they have their own infrastructure for deploying artifacts, and a lot of times that really just turns out to be something like APT or Yum. So one of the things that we're big promoters of is, first of all, Nexus can play that role of a Yum repo or a Maven repo. It's sort of multi-homed in that sense, and you can scale out Nexus to work in the production environment. We actually work with the customer that does that. But other ops teams that really want to manage their own tooling, the promotion process then becomes moving the artifact. Let's say it's a bunch of RPMs from Nexus into a Yum repo that's sitting behind an Apache server or something. So in either case, they are managing the flow of artifacts in a controlled way, but sometimes the repos change in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so actually I thought this would be a good time to show you the setup here. Well, maybe before I do that, I'll say one other thing. Really just how these things fit together. So what you're going to see here are two sets of plugins. One set of plugin is what runs on the Nexus side. This is the plugin that provides choices about what artifacts are in the repos, and this is done by your standard group artifact version way of searching the repos. And the other side is what runs on the Nexus, on the RunDeck server, which is a set of what we call step plugins that interact through the Nexus REST API to check to see if artifacts are there, copy artifacts out of the repo, and register that they were delivered to some node via RunDeck. So now I'm going to show you the sort of the technical integration here. So here's Sonatype Nexus, and I'll just go over here to the admin screen and just show you here is the RunDeck plugin.
Alex, Mark here, just to make sure, this is Nexus OSS, right?
It is, yeah. And I just downloaded this, installed it through the RunDeck plugin in here, popped a couple of artifacts in it. So it's very simple to use. Next time I'd like to do this with Nexus Pro and actually show you using an RPM deployment. This is going to be a Java jar deployment, but yes. Okay, so here it is, the plugin on the Nexus side. Not much to say about it other than it's installed and registered. Mm-hmm. And on the RunDeck side, here's RunDeck. So this is the first, I guess, you're seeing RunDeck interface. This is a jobs list. I'm going to go over here to the config page and just list these plugins over here. Workflow steps, got a few in here, as I just mentioned. The similar thing, you just copy these plugins in a way similar to Nexus, putting them into plugins directory basically, and then RunDeck can find them. So let me go back here to the jobs. And I thought I'd just kind of step through how these work because it'll go really quickly, but it'll help kind of build up how these things work. The first plugin I mentioned was this, does the artifact exist? Now, this is going to come into play later because when we do a workflow, we want to actually have a separate step to make sure it's actually in the repo. We're really trying to help people create sort of guardrails around their process, so that a lot of times that means kind of error checking at different levels. That's in contrast to somebody who's just got a bunch of automation code that does all kinds of things, but it's hard to know where things break in the process. So using this kind of workflow model, this is a step just shown standalone to do that. But let me show off here a little bit of what the Nexus plugin is doing. So right here I'm choosing between repos, and you might notice that the screen is sort of updating. When I check the staging repo for artifacts of COM Sardine and Artifact Sardine, this is the app I'm going to deploy. It's the Sardine app. It's got one choice. Now, if I go over here to releases, there are 3 choices. So these are basically the artifacts I can deploy. And the definition of this job really is just calling this plugin step, and some of it you can pass in options. Other you can decide what Nexus server to go to. I should say that this is a new crop of plugins, and it really reflects what we're seeing the community do, and we're baking this into a set of plugins that just kind of work out of the box. Some of these things might become more config layer, like the Nexus server. But I'm going to go ahead and run this, and I guess I'll just run. Doesn't really
Alex,
matter.
Mark here, while that's running, a question for you when you say this is what can be deployed. What's determining what can be deployed? Where are the policies and rules taking place? Is that within RunDeck?
Actually, in this case, it would be more on the Nexus side in terms of what artifacts could be, I guess you could say, accessible to the login that's connecting via the API. So what choices, kind of the restrictions around the version choices could be controlled really more on the Nexus side. Now, we could put extra filters through this option provider interface on the RunDeck side, but I think this is a good place to show where policy can be managed on both ends. So the job ran. Basically, it's just showing you some information that it does exist, and it prints out some headers, what kind of content type it is, and the date, and so on. But really, the point here is that if it didn't exist, it would have failed the job, and if this step was in a bigger workflow, it would have failed the workflow. Anyway, it just went over to the API, essentially did a head on this resource, and if the resource didn't exist, it would have thrown an error. So I think the next one I'll show you here is the deliver artifact. Same story, you pick your artifact through these options. Now, one thing I guess we could say is that these options they sort of depend on each other. So when I pick a repo, then it selects the group, and then picking the group selects the artifact, and then once I get those, I get a list of versions. So that's kind of sort of navigating you down. This deploy workflow basically, or job, is showing you it's pulling the artifact from the repo and installing it to the destination that I chose on the node that that this job matches on. And the last,
multiple nodes as well, right?
Pardon? Yes, it can be. Yeah, this is a really trivial example. It's just deploying it to one node. I'll show you in a moment how you can how that fans out to larger environments using node metadata for defining a filter for where these things go. The last thing I was going to show you is registering this information to RunDeck. So the idea here is that you can record some information about the artifact as node data. So this little output screen is just showing what that node data looks like in one of the formats. RunDeck supports XML, but I can go over here. Actually, let me just run the whole thing through now. So here I'm going to run through all those jobs. Oh, and just to kind of complete the story, I think in a little more realistic sense, and is to tie it to change management. Mm-hmm. You can imagine that if you're doing a real deployment to an important environment, that's a control process, and somebody would have let's say, a change ticket to approve that. There might be some background information. So this example here, what it's going to do is take a JIRA issue, and the user will choose what version they want to deploy, where it's going to deploy. and go through everything I just showed you. You can see that here, as well as update a JIRA issue. So this will append a message to the JIRA issue, and since I closed all my windows, I might have to take a moment to get back to that. But actually, let's try it out here. I can remember my password. Well, let's log in and I'll show you the... so here's that model info that's stored with that node where the artifact was deployed. Now, why is all this important to show? What we hear, I think, the most in this kind of use case is, first of all, you don't want the wrong person to deploy to the wrong place, so you want to have some restrictions around that. With RunDeck, you can define ACLs about what jobs you can run, what projects you can run, what nodes you're able to execute steps on. So there's a lot of fine-grained control over where things can happen. The other thing that is really important in that story is auditing. You know, what happens after the fact, and kind of giving you environmental views of what versions are where. So that's where this part of this demo is showing you is kind of creating a state view of your environment. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so here we go. We're looking at the JIRA dashboard, and it added a little message to that JIRA issue stating that this Nexus deployment just happened, and if you wanted to look at the output, you can click here. But now you have an audit trail that connects back to the whole change management process.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. Actually, it was interesting too that you called the repo staging, but it is interesting looking at the REST API call that you're making there. To define this, it does look like it would fit in really well with the Nexus Pro staging feature, in that you could use a group repository that had been defined, to hold your temporary staging repositories that are created when you stage a release, and have that tie directly over to staging in RunDeck, so that you could test those out via some staged test deployment in RunDeck, and then when you release these staging repositories, you could just go ahead and deploy the releases through RunDeck. So it does seem like there's an interesting tie in there.
Yeah, that's really on my mind, that exact use case you just described, and it's just really what that means is similar to that Jenkins to RunDeck plugin to trigger something. I could imagine a Nexus to RunDeck trigger that could do some kind of sanity check, some BBT or black box test or who knows what, to kind of do a final before it gets promoted into the next stage in the repo.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be done. That's right. Yeah, and I don't know whether, would it be pretty easy to write in some notifications too to RunDeck to let you know when something had been promoted? I'm not sure if that fits in with the workflow or not, looking at it, but it would be possible. But certainly in terms of doing the final sanity checks of the artifacts, in terms of scanning them, say if you have CLM integration, scanning them for security vulnerabilities and things like that, that could be done with the Nexus staging plus RunDeck.
Yeah, and notifications, one of the plugin points for RunDeck. I just brought this up to show you how that JIRA thing fit into the process. But I think here it's just another one of this, another example of a Nexus plugin that uses the Nexus API to talk backwards up to Nexus.
Yeah, and that's all pluggable as well. So there's folks in the community that have done IRC plugins, the Hubot chatbot plugin. What's the popular chat tool that people are also HipChat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's basically that's all plugin points. So if you got whether it's talking to an enterprise ticket system or it's talking to kind of more of a modern chat ops type tool, you just drop a plug in there and away it goes.
So who has written these plugins, the Nexus-related ones, on the Nexus side as well as on the RunDeck side? You guys written them, or is it just random contributors, or sort of more like a very collaborative effort of like lots of people, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it started as kind of not random, but it started with just folks in the community. But now there's certain ones that we're working on beefing up, and the Sonatype plugin, or for the whole suite, but especially Nexus. That's something that we're see it being pretty central to popular in the community. So we're working on putting development effort behind that as well.
Yeah,
And all those are in GitHub as well, right?
Alex, are the official? I guess official. Hate the word official, but are the ones that you've been working on? Are those out on GitHub yet? Or are you?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's all of our plugins are there's a plugins page on rundeck.org, and it's not all the plugins available, but most of the ones that are popular or that we know there's some effort behind are listed there.
Damon, one of the business questions for me would be, are the people that are choosing RunDeck the same people that are choosing Nexus? Is it the same organization that's choosing?
Often it is. Often it's also a way to kind of bridge communication between organizations. So I'm not sure who exactly chooses Nexus. We usually see it coming from more of the build and release, kind of flashpoint. The folks in the middle. Perhaps more trending towards the dev side. RunDeck, I think, often tends to come more from the operation side. But in this new kind of DevOps style of working, where you see organizations that don't think about a dev and ops divide, they just think about pipelines. Then in those organizations, it tends to come more from the dev side. So RunDeck is nice thing about being open source is that there's no sales process to bring it into your organization. But it's definitely an ops tool, right?
Yeah, I definitely know some of our customers are using RunDeck, and it was interesting to see your customer slide there. I certainly saw
I was going to relate to that too.
Familiar names there, although I can't say which ones.
Yeah, I mean Nexus is a very and that's not really that's what I would call it a customer slide. Really, it's just folks that in the community that we know that talk about using RunDeck. Some of those are some ops customers, some of them aren't. But yeah, I mean Nexus is definitely as Alex said, like the Jenkins, Nexus, RunDeck, trio there is a very popular combination that we see.
When we originally started talking about this, you and I did, Damon, the interest was like you said, as we're coming into more and more organizations, we're seeing Nexus there too. And I know that Alex gave us a very specific technical example, but can you give us an overall picture of what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is it used to be it was the people in the middle, right? It was the people getting squeezed that had to get something done, right? And they were very concerned with the technical integration. Just I need to move the bits through this pipeline. I need something that's lightweight and something that's easy to integrate, that can bend to my process, that can adapt to whatever changes that are coming down the pipe. And I think that's when you saw them say, okay, we got Jenkins, more Bamboo or something like that on our build side. We've got it's our CI server. We've got a package repository, and I think the understanding that you need an actual formal, well-structured, full-featured package repository is a good thing in an organization. You can't just throw your artifacts out onto a web dev share somewhere and expect things to go well. So that understanding's there. So they're putting the repository in, and then using RunDeck to formalize those ops procedures and to really drive, especially from the deployment automation side, was kind of always the first step, right? Because that's what the flashpoint there. So we saw that, and that was kind of the the toolsmith level. The folks on the ground just need to get stuff. I need to make a button that I can push that I can push, and everything happens, or I can hand it to somebody else and everything can happen. And that was the original sort of drive. And I think what we've seen really unfold recently is the business is taking note. The management's taking note and saying, I need a platform view of my world, right? And I need to be able to integrate these things and get a consistent view of what the activity is, where things at in the life cycle, what's going on out in my environment, and I need it for management concerns, I need it for auditing and compliance concerns. So I think the real opportunity that we see here is for the toolsmiths, the people on the ground that are making this stuff work, to integrate these tools and present that to their bosses, to be the hero, right? To use the stuff that they wanted to do anyways to get their job done, but also they can turn around and say, hey, management, here is the visibility you wanted, and dev team, here's the access and control you wanted. NOC team, we're actually going to give you some power to go and solve problems and be the heroes yourself. So it's a way for them to take the tools they were always using and put them together and unlock some cool new value and be the hero in their organization without having to take on some big encumbered monolithic tool to get it done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. As we're coming near the end, Greg, you've been kind of the silent partner here. Anything you want to add to this?
Not much to say. I think that the integration between Nexus and RunDeck it's already there has been a plugin for a while. The use of the job option input as a way to get the version information out of Nexus and use that to drive the deployment of artifacts really kind of just augments what people are doing already. So that's a great way to give access via RunDeck to the output of your builds for the ops people, essentially.
Great, thanks. Manfred, you already knew of RunDeck. Anything new that you saw here that was exciting today?
Yeah, I didn't know so much about the RunDeck side plugin, so I think that's really useful and good to know. We'll probably have to make sure that we'll talk to you guys closely going forward also with Nexus 3.0 and make sure that all the REST APIs and things like that you're hitting are working nicely all the way, and so that's going to be interesting. I was going to ask a sort of related question, though. You've been mentioning all the time that RunDeck is open source, and that's awesome. What are you doing for people that are happy to use open source and contribute, but then also want to have somebody that helps them along a bit? Like, are you
sure? Yeah. I mean, we like money, so yeah, it's pays the bills for us, and it's fine. I mean, we sort of have this thought that the current footprint of RunDeck is our pledge is that's an open source tool, and we want people to be able to invest in it, invest their skills in it, and not feel like we're going to cut them off at the pass someday with force them to pay to use the thing that they wanted to use. So we're committed to RunDeck. That current footprint as an open source thing, and what we do to for how we make money is we provide support. So a lot of folks like support contracts or support subscriptions, and really it's almost like a communication subscription, right? They know they're kind of in tight with our core development group. They can ask questions, get a lot of feedback, help troubleshooting. Your classic kind of brings them in tight to the community, and it's priced that way. We do a lot of training and kind of really focused, quick start or jump start type engagements or tune-up engagements, we call them, where we go and we parachute in and help folks for a week and help them sort through some new thing that they want to do. And the last one is sponsor development. Actually, it's been really kind of amazing. A lot of organizations come to us and say, hey, I know there's some things on the roadmap out there, but it would really help our organization if we can do X, Y, and Z. So we'd love to sponsor development in these particular areas. Some of the cool new output screens, which Alex really didn't get a chance to show today, in RunDeck, were all driven by a sponsor development project. Another one we just wrapped up that's an organization is really helping to beef up the APIs because they wanted RunDeck to not only deploy their new cloud infrastructure, but also each cloud sort of environment would get its own RunDeck for managing itself. So it sort of RunDecks all the way down. So to do that, they want to really beef up the RunDeck APIs to manage projects, SSH keys, all kinds of stuff. So that's the other thing. And then also we're keeping our eye out for what are things we can do that are related to RunDeck or add-ons, other things to add value to the community. And those are things that we're looking to develop and come out with. But again, it wouldn't infringe on the fact that those core button makers and button pushers, they're betting on RunDeck, and we're committed to providing them with that full open source experience.
Rich, any final thoughts on this?
I have a few ideas that are kicking around just looking at it that seem interesting, but I don't really want to go into them in too much detail. But it does seem like, to me, there might be a real value add here if you consider not just Nexus, but Nexus plus CLM.
Yeah.
If RunDeck were able to kick off the final scan right before you do your deploy to see if there's any new security vulnerabilities, since the thing was last tested before it actually goes out of production, that would be kind of an interesting tie-in. And I think that wouldn't take too much work to do, so might be something we might want to talk about at some point.
Well, Rich, that's a great example of what I was talking about, the folks on the ground, they need to get their job done. I got to get the bits from point A to point B. And then it's like, wow, if I've got this plug-in point where I can do something of cool and value that suddenly makes the InfoSec guys love me, makes my boss love me, I look good to the organization.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I just added in a step.
Yeah, and it looks like it would be pretty easy to add. Yeah,
that's the idea. That's the kind of stuff that we want to enable that say, hey, the core framework here for folks to get their job done, RunDeck, there it is, do your thing, and then, what are the ways we can add value that you look good to the rest of your organization, and it didn't force you to use things you didn't want to use, didn't force you to do that much extra effort beyond what you're already doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks great.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Damon, Greg, Alex, thank you so much for jumping in. Very exciting. Looking forward to seeing what we can do together in the future.
Yeah, we're excited. Thanks, everybody.
Manfred, Rich, thanks as always. We'll see you next month.
Yeah,
All
thanks,
right.
man. What's happening next month?
Next month, we've got a surprise guest. And I'm going to hold off because I'm going to want to announce that. But it's going to be exciting. We got something exciting coming up.
All right.
All right. So thank you, guys. We'll see you in July. Have a good June.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.